As somebody who lived 17 of their 20 years on this earth in Bristol, I've always been surrounded by supporters of Bristol City and also by the club itself due to a few family ties. So that, obviously begs a question that some of you might be asking: how have you ended up supporting Manchester City instead of the Robins? And well, I'm here to answer that first part of the question as to why I don't support Bristol City by discussing some of my problems that I have with the club, which make it so that they don't really appeal to me.
Still life in this perhaps for Bristol City. In by Taylor. It's Smith! The roof has just come off here at Ashton Gate. Stoppage time. Bristol City 2, Manchester United 1.
I think it's really important to start at the beginning and give some background. I was born in Yorkshire. But I moved to Bristol when I was like around 2 years old, so obviously I spent like a lot of my life growing up, and then obviously when I was 19 I moved here where I am now to university in Southampton, so obviously spent most of my growing up in in Bristol. So I was obviously surrounded by City fans, the club, all of growing up. And that even led to me going to my first ever football match in 2011, which was at Ashton Gate. I think it was a championship match. I think it was against Ipswich. Might have been against West Brom. I know I've seen Bristol City versus West Brom and Bristol City versus Ipswich, but I just can't remember which one came first. But anyway, I was already a Manchester City fan at this point. I started supporting City in 2009. I was only 6 years old, which is kind of mad to think about, actually. But so there was no special connection between me and the club. Like when I went to the game, I wasn't like, wow, this is where I want to come every weekend. But I really did enjoy the experience to be able to see football live. It was obviously great. But as I grew up and I started to understand football more and even English geography more, I did start to develop a few issues with the club, a few problems, if you will. And I think the perfect place to start with these issues is the ownership. So if we look at the ownership of Bristol City, Stefan Lansdown, he's one of the main issues I have with the club is the ownership of the club. Lansdown is not just the owner of Bristol City, but he is also one of the founding members of Bristol Sport. Bristol Sport are the organisation that own Bristol City Football Club, Bristol Bears Rugby, and Bristol Flyers basketball team. And obviously, in theory, this seems like a good idea. Having one group owning all of the city's big sporting teams. Obviously, there's still Bristol Rovers, but that's a whole different kettle of fish, that one, which I'm not going to go into today. But yeah, all the big sporting teams. It seems like a good idea, but in practice, it hasn't really worked out the way people expected, and there are issues around managing investment and making serious and this is also involved in like making serious financial losses due to COVID. In the 2021-22 season, one of the seasons following COVID, I'd say it's the first proper season following COVID, because obviously COVID hit in the 1920 season, and then there was obviously the 2021 season, but I'd say this is the first proper season of it having fans and stuff where they're able to make like a decent amount of money. City reportedly lost 38.4 million pre-tax, which is 28.3 million more than the 10.1 million lost the pre-season. This obviously is significantly more than the 3.5 million pre-tax that Bristol Bears lost in the same year. This was obviously coming off Bristol Bears having an impressive season the season before, showing they were probably a better resource to invest money into. Although there were 2 or 3 years before COVID where where Lansdown's main priority for investing, but those times have passed due to the higher financial risk This leads obviously me on to my next part, which is ambition. And the title of this section might seem very weird because it's ambition in the wrong areas, and you're thinking, how can you be ambitious in the wrong areas when it comes to running a business? Like, obviously, like, you think, oh, all ambition's good, but in this case it's not, because I think you should just hear me out on this one, because Bristol is obviously one of the biggest cities in England. Like, it's a main city, especially when you consider the southwest of England. Like, it is the main area in the southwest, the big hub of the southwest of England. And obviously many of the big cities in the country have Premier League teams, such as, London has multiple, Manchester, Birmingham and Liverpool all have top flight teams, or have had top flight teams, but they all do currently have top flight teams as of now anyway. But Bristol have never had a top flight Premier League team. Never. Bristol Rovers, Bristol City, never been in the Premier League, which is crazy, and I think it shows that the Robins are underachieving. And this is where the misguided ambition comes in, because in 2014 work started to expand Ashton Gate, which cost £45 million, and the work was finished in 2016. This was to expand the stadium to allow both City and the Bears to play at the ground. And during this period, City started growing on social media as a social media brand of introducing their goal gifts. They were one of the first teams that I saw to do it. On social media. Obviously a lot of teams do it now, but Bristol City were like the first one I saw do it, and obviously making a lot more YouTube content around the team and the squad. And all of this would be fine if they were actually challenging for automatic promotion and the playoffs, but instead they're just a consistent mid-table championship team. This is also linked to the ownership. This is because in the 21-22 season, City grew a debt up to £97 million, and £89 million of that was owed to Lansdowne himself. So obviously, if the club owes him money, he's obviously not going to invest more money into the club until he earns the money back from the club. And obviously, with the club not making Lansdowne any money, it led to them losing some of their best players, and every season they're only replacing them with free transfers. Like, I'm thinking of a lot of players such as Bobby Reed, Joe Bryan, Adam Webster, Josh Brownhill, all players like this. Even Semenyo, who's recently joined Bournemouth, and Alex Scott looks to be leaving at the end of the season as well. And these players, obviously they're making the club money, they're selling these players, but they're not reinvesting the money anywhere. They're just bringing in free transfers. And another thing that I do find embarrassing about it all is, obviously, the club's in the southwest, right? London teams don't like selling to London teams. United don't like selling to City or Liverpool and stuff like that. But Bristol City are selling their players to Swansea and Cardiff, and these are two of their biggest rivals. And it is, I find it's quite embarrassing, really. And obviously, with City not really refreshing their squad, 9 times out of 10 these players don't improve. These free transfers don't improve their squad, so they're not progressing towards promotion or the playoffs. So what's the point? What's the point in having this big social media presence, this big stadium, if you're not even going to try get to the Premier League and you're just going to sit in a mid-table position? Like, I just feel like they've got the ambitions to be a big club in the complete wrong areas, but obviously this is just my opinion. But moving on to my conclusion, the rest of the final piece of my point. In conclusion, the main reason I don't like City is because I just feel like they are more of a social media brand instead of a football club. Like, for example, Manchester City, we have a similar way of running our social medias, like a social media tactic. But this is backed up with the success of us competing for trophies. And yes, I don't expect Bristol City to be playing the Champions League, competing for the Premier League title. But what I do mean is, like, if we dropped off, like if Man City dropped off when we were struggling to get top 4, like, we're underachieving our goals or our expectations, but we're still doing all this social media work, I'd be like, hang on, like, we should be focusing on achieving what's expected of us instead of just pumping out all this content to please other people. And I think that's just what it boils down to, really. Bristol City, I think, and I've spoke to a lot of people about this, people from Bristol City fans, and even people at uni here that come from different parts of the country that watch EFL football. They're like, well, no, yeah, Bristol City should realistically be a Premier League side, but they just don't have, like, they don't invest their resources in the right areas. But let me know what you think on the subject, and comment down below what you think. Comment down below what you want to see next. Like the video, subscribe, go check out the rest of the videos on my channel, and I will see you in the next one.